It's not a coincidence you're here. Something inside you, subtle yet persistent, brought you to this exact moment. Perhaps it began as a quiet discomfort, a tension in a relationship you can't explain, or a growing sense that someone no longer fits where they once did. You didn't search for this video by logic alone. You were guided, nudged by something deeper than reason. And if you listen closely, you may recognize that what you call intuition is really the voice of the unconscious beginning to speak. Louise Von Franz, a brilliant thinker and collaborator of Carl Jung, spent her life exploring that hidden voice. She believed we are not entirely ruled by our conscious minds. Behind our choices, reactions, and emotions lies a vast realm, the unconscious, that moves us in ways we often fail to recognize. It's not just a storage house for memories or repressed thoughts. It's an intelligent, symbolic force that directs us toward growth, healing, and wholeness, often by unraveling what no longer serves us. Have you ever felt a sudden distance with someone you once felt close to? Or noticed your energy shift when they enter a room, not because of anything they've done, but because something in you has changed? That is not always mere mood. It can be the unconscious beginning to withdraw, to create space where you've become entangled. And the more you resist, the louder it becomes. Not through words, but through emotions, dreams, disruptions, and patterns that repeat until you pay attention. Von Franz taught that the psyche speaks in symbols and synchronicities. It sends signals not to punish or confuse you, but to lead you closer to your true self. If someone in your life is beginning to feel off, if you feel drained around them, unsure of your place, or strangely compelled to seek answers, you are not being paranoid. You are being prompted. This video is not about blame. It is not even about the other person. It's about listening to the deeper intelligence inside you that is trying to open your eyes, not with anger, but with clarity. There are signs, quiet and persistent, that someone may no longer belong in your path. And once you learn to recognize them, something that once felt confusing will start to feel strangely inevitable. Keep watching. This is not the end of a connection. It may be the beginning of something far more honest. You live much of your life thinking you're in control, making choices, setting goals, navigating relationships with deliberate intention. But beneath that surface, another intelligence moves quietly. It doesn't speak in words. It doesn't reason the way your conscious mind does. Instead, it dreams, it reacts, it remembers. Carl Jung called it the unconscious, and to Louise Von Franz, it was not just a passive storehouse of memories, but an active, living force, one that shapes your experience in ways you don't fully understand until you're ready to see. The unconscious is everything you do not know about yourself, but that still influences your thoughts, actions, and desires. It holds both your forgotten pain and your unexpressed potential. It includes the shadow, those parts of you that you have rejected, hidden, or refused to acknowledge. Often the shadow takes the form of traits you dislike in others, not realizing that they reflect something unresolved within. Anger, jealousy, pride, fear, they may not belong to the world alone. They may be pieces of yourself, waiting to be seen. Von Franz dedicated her life to helping others navigate this hidden terrain. She believed that the unconscious is not chaotic or irrational, but deeply symbolic. It communicates through images, not logic, through symbols, not explanations, and it never stops speaking. It only waits for you to listen. Dreams are one of its clearest expressions. They appear strange or fragmented because they do not follow the rules of your waking mind. But if you look closely, you'll find messages in them, repetitions, symbols, even people who appear again and again, not as they are, but as representations of something deeper. A locked door may be a sign of emotional closure. A distant figure might represent a part of you that you've grown apart from. Then there is intuition, those quiet inner signals that guide you without evidence. You feel a heaviness before entering a conversation. You hesitate before saying yes. You meet someone and sense something's wrong, though nothing appears to be. This is not imagination. It is the unconscious gently revealing what your conscious mind has not yet processed. And patterns, perhaps the most persistent language of the unconscious. The same conflict, again and again. The same type of person, returning in different forms. When life repeats, it's not because you are cursed. It's because the unconscious is trying to complete something unfinished. It brings back the lesson until you understand its shape. To Von Franz, these moments were sacred. She saw them not as symptoms to suppress, but as invitations to grow. The unconscious is not against you. It is for you. And when it begins to move someone out of your life, it is not a failure. It is often a step toward deeper integrity. The more you learn to hear its language, the less you will need to force anything. The truth will begin to speak for itself. You sit across from them, sharing the same space, the same words, the same familiar routines. But something is different. You can't explain it, but you feel it. A weight, a tension, a quiet discomfort growing between the lines of the conversation. They haven't done anything obvious, nothing you can point to, nothing dramatic. And yet, afterward, you feel strangely tired, drained in a way that doesn't make sense. Your body is still there, but something in your heart has already begun to leave. This is not rudeness. It's not coldness. It's the silent work of the unconscious beginning to withdraw its energy. Louise Von Franz spoke of this process often. She understood that when a relationship has reached its psychological limit, the psyche starts pulling back, long before the conscious mind is ready to accept it. What you feel as vague unease is often the first sign of something deeper unraveling. You try to override it. You remind yourself of all the good times, all the reasons to stay connected, to stay close. But your body doesn't lie. It tightens in their presence. You find yourself editing what you say. The laughter feels forced. You question your own reactions, wondering why you're so sensitive. But this sensitivity is not weakness. It's awareness. It's the whisper of the inner world trying to tell you the truth. When a relationship no longer aligns with who you are becoming, your inner life begins to reject it, not with anger, but with discomfort. It's like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit. You can still put them on, but you feel it everywhere, in the seams, in the fabric, in your breath. That subtle strain becomes impossible to ignore. Von Franz believed that the unconscious doesn't sever connections all at once. It loosens them thread by thread, giving the conscious mind time to catch up. And this discomfort, this growing sense of emotional misalignment, is the soul's way of saying, this no longer nourishes you. Not because the other person is bad, but because the dynamic between you has changed, and it's no longer true. You don't need a reason that makes sense to others. You don't need evidence to validate what you feel. The truth is not always loud. It begins as quiet dissonance, and the longer you pretend not to hear it, the heavier it becomes. Some endings begin not with words, but with a feeling, a soft, persistent ache in your presence, a silence that used to feel peaceful, now filled with something unnamed. This is not failure. It's not betrayal. It's the unconscious clearing space for what is next. Let yourself notice it. You are not being difficult. You are being shown. You sit across from them, sharing the same space, the same words, the same familiar routines. But something is different. You can't explain it, but you feel it. A weight, a tension, a quiet discomfort growing between the lines of the conversation. They haven't done anything obvious. Nothing you can point to, nothing dramatic. And yet, afterward, you feel strangely tired, drained in a way that doesn't make sense. Your body is still there, but something in your heart has already begun to leave. This is not rudeness. It's not coldness. It's the silent work of the unconscious beginning to withdraw its energy. Louise Von Franz spoke of this process often. She understood that when a relationship has reached its psychological limit, the psyche starts pulling back, long before the conscious mind is ready to accept it. What you feel as vague unease is often the first sign of something deeper unraveling. You try to override it. You remind yourself of all the good times, all the reasons to stay connected, to stay close. But your body doesn't lie. It tightens in their presence. You find yourself editing what you say. The laughter feels forced. You question your own reactions, wondering why you're so sensitive. But this sensitivity is not weakness. It's awareness. It's the whisper of the inner world trying to tell you the truth. When a relationship no longer aligns with who you are becoming, your inner life begins to reject it, not with anger, but with discomfort. It's like trying to wear clothes that no longer fit. You can still put them on, but you feel it everywhere, in the seams, in the fabric, in your breath. That subtle strain becomes impossible to ignore. Von Franz believed that the unconscious doesn't sever connections all at once. It loosens them thread by thread, giving the conscious mind time to catch up. And this discomfort, this growing sense of emotional misalignment, is the soul's way of saying, this no longer nourishes you. Not because the other person is bad, but because the dynamic between you has changed, and it's no longer true. You don't need a reason that makes sense to others. You don't need evidence to validate what you feel. The truth is not always loud. It begins as quiet dissonance, and the longer you pretend not to hear it, the heavier it becomes. Some endings begin not with words, but with a feeling, a soft, persistent ache in your presence, a silence that used to feel peaceful, now filled with something unnamed. This is not failure. It's not betrayal. It's the unconscious clearing space for what is next. Let yourself notice it. You are not being difficult. You are being shown. You wake from the dream unsettled. Maybe you don't remember all of it, just fragments. A hallway you can't walk down, a door that won't open, someone turning away just as you reach for them. Or maybe you dream of distance, silence, something precious left behind. At first it feels random, disconnected. But then it happens again. Another dream, another image, another feeling of parting. You begin to wonder if it means something. And it does. Louise Von Franz spent much of her life interpreting the symbolic language of dreams. She believed dreams are not meaningless echoes of the day, but messages from the unconscious, delivered in metaphor, image, and mood. When a relationship has served its purpose, the unconscious often begins the process of release long before you're ready to act. And one of the first signs is the shift in your dreams. You may see someone walking away from you, slowly fading into the background, or you find yourself locked out of a space you once felt safe in. The conversation cuts off. A phone doesn't work. Their voice grows faint. These aren't just scenarios. They are symbols. Symbols of disconnection, endings, unfinished chapters that are no longer meant to continue. The unconscious knows how tightly we cling. It knows how the conscious mind invents reasons to stay, to hold on, to explain away what we feel. So it speaks a different language, one we cannot easily deny. A dream of loss that makes your chest ache. An image that haunts you even after you wake. These are not accidents. They are signals, asking you to look more closely. Von Franz taught that when you dream repeatedly of separation, the soul is trying to prepare you. Not to punish, not to frighten, but to loosen your grip gently. Because letting go in waking life is hard. We resist it. We question it. But in the quiet vulnerability of sleep, the truth slips past our defenses. If you begin to notice these dreams, don't dismiss them. Don't brush them off as strange or random. Pay attention to how they make you feel. Often, what you cannot say out loud appears in the dreamscape first, because the unconscious always moves toward truth. It always seeks wholeness, even if that path passes through loss. Some separations don't begin with words or actions. They begin in the symbolic world. A closing door, a forgotten bag, a train you miss. These are not just dreams. They are gentle farewells from the part of you that already knows. You try to speak, But something doesn't land. The words feel off, even when you choose them carefully. You explain. They react. You clarify. They misunderstand. What used to feel effortless between you now requires constant repair. The connection that once flowed without effort is now tangled in confusion, misread intentions, and silences that say too much or nothing at all. It's as if you're both slightly out of phase with each other, like radio stations that no longer tune in on the same frequency. This kind of misalignment isn't always loud. It doesn't arrive with arguments or dramatic confrontations. Often, it's subtle. A conversation that leaves you more tired than heard. A gesture that's taken the wrong way. An inside joke that suddenly feels foreign. And the more you try to fix it, the more disconnected it becomes. You tell yourself it's just a phase. Maybe you're both stressed. Maybe life got in the way. But beneath those surface explanations, something deeper may be shifting. Carl Jung believed in synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that seem to align with inner truth. When two people are psychically connected, even life around them moves in harmony. Conversations feel timely. Messages arrive when most needed. There's a rhythm, a mutual reflection. But when that connection begins to fade, synchronicity fades with it. The timing slips. The symbols grow quiet. Life no longer affirms the bond. It begins to challenge it. Louise Von Franz saw this dissonance as more than a communication issue. She understood it as the psyche withdrawing its energy, signaling that something vital has changed. When misunderstandings become the norm, when your best intentions are twisted into something unrecognizable, it may be that your unconscious is no longer aligned with the dynamic, not out of resentment, but out of truth. Sometimes we hold on to people because of what they once were to us. But the unconscious doesn't cling to memory. It responds to what is. And when it senses that the shared path has reached its end, it begins to unravel the connection in small, almost imperceptible ways. Communication breaks down. The flow becomes forced. You no longer feel met, only managed. You don't have to hate someone to outgrow them. And misalignment doesn't always mean something is wrong with either of you. It may simply mean the resonance that once existed has fulfilled its purpose. The language of the soul is changing, and no amount of conscious effort can recreate a connection that the unconscious has already begun to release. In these moments, clarity doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from listening deeper, to the tension, to the misfires, to the growing sense that what once connected you now keeps you apart. The unconscious is not trying to hurt you. It's trying to set you free. At first, it seems like they've changed. The way they speak, the way they act. It feels sharper, colder, more intrusive. But if you're honest, what unsettles you isn't just their behavior. It's what they awaken in you. A reaction that feels too big for the moment. A heaviness that lingers long after the interaction. You find yourself irritated, anxious, maybe even resentful, and yet unsure why. What once felt safe is now tangled in emotion you can't quite name. This is not just tension. It's a sign that the shadow has returned. Louise Von Franz spoke often about the shadow, not only as the dark parts of ourselves we try to hide, but also as the lost qualities we have forgotten we carry. The shadow is everything we do not accept about who we are. And one of the ways it reveals itself is through others, especially those closest to us. When someone begins to mirror your unhealed wounds, it doesn't always come as conflict. Sometimes it comes as a quiet pain, an uncomfortable familiarity. Their presence becomes a trigger, not because they intend harm, but because your unconscious is surfacing something that was long buried. You may notice parts of yourself you've disowned, neediness, anger, pride, fear, suddenly reflected in them. Or worse, you may see them judging you in ways you already judge yourself. This is projection, but it is not an illusion. It's an invitation. The psyche doesn't bring the shadow forward to punish you. It brings it so you can see what is incomplete, so you can integrate the parts of yourself you've rejected in order to feel whole. And sometimes, it uses the people closest to you as mirrors, because that's where you're most vulnerable, most open, most affected. You may feel confused. Is this person truly harmful, or are they simply revealing something you haven't yet faced? The answer isn't always clear. That's the nature of the unconscious. It blurs the line between outer conflict and inner truth. What matters is the feeling that something deeper is stirring, something that asks not for judgment, but for reflection. Von Franz understood that when a relationship activates the shadow, it has reached a turning point. You can either deepen your self-awareness or become trapped in blame and reaction. The discomfort is not the enemy, it's the signal. And it may mean the connection has become more about your inner evolution than about shared harmony. Sometimes the most difficult people in our lives are not villains. They are messengers. They show us who we are, or who we were, or who we're afraid of becoming. When this happens, the question is not whether to hold on tighter or walk away, but whether you're willing to face what's being revealed. Because what disturbs you in them may be the very thing your soul needs you to see in yourself. You try to connect, but something always gets in the way. A message left unread. A meeting that gets postponed again. You plan to talk, to clear the air, but the moment slips through your fingers. Someone gets sick, the timing is off, something urgent always interrupts. At first, you dismiss it as bad luck, as simple coincidence, but eventually, it becomes too consistent to ignore. The harder you try to sustain the bond, the more the world seems to quietly rearrange itself to keep you apart. Carl Jung called this kind of pattern a meaningful accident, not random, not fate, but a reflection of something happening beneath the surface. Louise Von Franz took this idea even further. She believed that when the unconscious is ready to release a connection, it begins to speak not just through dreams or feelings, but through the structure of events themselves. Life starts to mirror what your inner world already knows, but hasn't yet admitted. You may notice a strange rhythm begin to emerge. You're available, they're not. They reach out, and you're suddenly distant. Conversations that once flowed now feel forced or strained. Even when there's no tension between you, the opportunities to truly meet keep slipping away. And it's not because either of you is trying to avoid the other. It's because something deeper is no longer holding the bond together. The unconscious has its own intelligence. It knows when a relationship is beginning to expire. And when you resist that knowing, it will find other ways to show you. Through obstacles, through delays, through patterns you can't control. These disruptions are not punishments. They are signals. Not that the other person is wrong, but that the dynamic is no longer aligned. It's tempting to fight this, to double down, to prove your loyalty by forcing connection, by insisting that persistence means love. But sometimes, love means listening to the spaces that open between people. Sometimes the gaps are not there to be closed. They are there to be honored. The unconscious is subtle, but it is persistent. And when it starts to remove someone from your life, it rarely does so all at once. It lets the silence grow first. It lets the rhythm falter. If you find that everything seems to be pulling you apart, without anger, without blame, pause. Ask yourself what part of you is already letting go. Often, by the time the world starts blocking a connection, the soul has already said its goodbye. You're not being careless. You're being moved. When the psyche begins to speak, the first impulse is often to act, to clarify, to repair, to save what feels like it's slipping away. You may feel urgency rising inside you, pushing you to have one more conversation, to explain yourself more clearly, to prove your care. But the unconscious doesn't speak through urgency. It speaks through quiet shifts, subtle discomfort, symbolic patterns that invite reflection before reaction. Louise Von Franz taught that when something changes in a relationship, especially when the change feels ambiguous or confusing, it is not always a sign to intervene. It is often a sign to listen more deeply. The unconscious moves slowly, symbolically, and its signals are rarely straightforward. When you feel a relationship beginning to fade, or a growing dissonance you can't explain, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. To witness what is unfolding rather than rush to control it. Ask yourself what is really happening beneath the surface. Is this disconnection rooted in fear, or is it revealing a truth you've tried not to face? Are you projecting a part of yourself onto the other person, expecting them to play a role they no longer can? Are you being shown something about your own patterns, your unmet needs, or your history with loss and attachment? Von Franz would not tell you to cut ties or chase certainty. She would tell you to watch for the meaning behind the events. A relationship growing silent may be asking to end, or it may be asking you to change how you show up in it. Only time and reflection will tell. But either way, the call is not to force, it's to understand. Symbolic understanding is not about making quick decisions. It's about recognizing the inner movements that are shaping your experience. The psyche, when it wants to release something, will rarely shout. It will whisper through misalignment, dreams, emotional exhaustion, and missed connections. If you try to overpower those messages with logic or control, you may miss the very lesson your soul is trying to bring into light. Sit with the discomfort. Let the uncertainty speak. Sometimes the clarity you seek comes not from solving the relationship, but from seeing what it revealed in you. And when you understand that, you may no longer need to hold on so tightly. You are not failing by letting things unfold. You are not being passive by choosing to listen. When the psyche speaks, it does so with the wisdom of every part of you, past, present, and becoming. Trust that voice. It always leads you where you are meant to go. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It is not an act of coldness or failure or forgetting. It is, in its truest form, an act of wholeness, of recognizing that something in you has shifted, and that the space you once held open for someone is now asking to be returned to you. This is not about rejection. It is about completion. Louise Von Franz understood that the unconscious doesn't take from us arbitrarily. It removes what no longer supports our becoming. And often, that means relationships, no matter how meaningful they once were, that have reached their symbolic end. Not because the love was false, but because your soul has grown, and in that growth, some dynamics can no longer follow. You may feel grief. Of course you will. Endings are never clean, and the absence of someone who once mattered can echo for a long time. But beneath that sadness, something else quietly begins to rise. A feeling not of loss, but of return. A return to yourself. A sense that you no longer have to shapeshift, shrink, explain, or wait for the connection to make sense again. Because now you understand. It played its part. It showed you something you needed to see. And now, it has stepped aside so that you can walk more freely. You do not lose them. You reclaim yourself. This is the quiet revolution that happens when you follow the movement of your own psyche instead of the pull of guilt or habit. You begin to choose truth over attachment, peace over performance. You stop asking what went wrong, and instead start asking what became right within you. If something in this message resonates, trust that it's not random. The unconscious brought you here for a reason, and maybe that reason is simple, to remind you that it's okay to let go, that it's not a sign of weakness, but of readiness. You are not here to hold on to everything. You are here to become who you were always meant to be. If this spoke to you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. Your story may help someone else find their own clarity. And if you wish to keep walking this path of depth, truth, and inner transformation, subscribe for more. Because the journey toward yourself doesn't happen all at once. It happens moment by moment, step by step, choice by choice. And this letting go, is one of those sacred steps.